Last night, Sage had accidentally sent the most brutally honest critique of her life, directly to the streamer she had been roasting. What should have been a disaster had somehow turned into something else entirely. Austin Reed, the confident ReedPlays with 2 million followers, had been unexpectedly humble, vulnerable even. And when he had suggested they help each other, when he had called their meeting a date, something warm and terrifying had bloomed in Sage's chest. Now, 24 hours later, that warmth had transformed into a mixture of excitement and pure terror that had kept her tossing and turning until dawn. She sat in the computer lab trying to focus on her advanced algorithms assignment, but her eyes kept drifting to the clock in the corner of her screen. 9:47 in the evening. He had said after 10, which meant 13 more minutes. Sage had arrived 2 hours early, telling herself it was to finish homework. But really, she had wanted to claim the best workstation, the one in the back corner where they could spread out without curious eyes watching every move. She had also spent an embarrassing amount of time that morning choosing her outfit. Nothing too fancy, just her favorite dark jeans and a soft gray sweater that her roommate Maya always said brought out her eyes. "Stop overthinking," she told herself, fingers dancing across the keyboard as she tried to solve a particularly complex sorting algorithm. It is just tutoring, technical help, nothing more. But her heart betrayed her calm facade, beating just a little faster every time she heard footsteps in the hallway. At exactly 10:03 in the evening, the lab door opened with its familiar electronic beep. Sage looked up and felt her breath catch in her throat. Austin Reed was taller than she had expected. Not just tall, maybe 6 feet 2 inches or 6 feet 3 inches, but the way he carried himself was different from his streaming persona. Online, ReedPlays commanded attention with easy confidence. But this Austin? He stood in the doorway looking genuinely nervous, running a hand through his dark hair as his eyes scanned the lab. When his gaze found hers, he offered a small, almost shy smile that was nothing like his signature streaming grin. "Sage?" His voice carried across the quiet space, softer than she had heard it in his videos. She raised her hand in a little wave, immediately feeling ridiculous. "That is me." As he approached her workstation, she noticed he was carrying not just a laptop bag, but what looked like a small arsenal of cables, adapters, and equipment. The bag looked like it might collapse under the weight. "Please tell me you did not bring your entire streaming setup," she said, unable to hide her amusement. Austin's cheeks flushed slightly as he set the bag down with a heavy thud. "Okay, so I might have overpacked. I was not sure what you would need to see, and I figured it was better to bring everything than to forget something important." The earnestness in his voice made something flutter in Sage's chest. This was not the smooth, confident ReedPlays she had watched stumble through technical explanations. This was just Austin, and he was nervous. "Well, let us see what we are working with," she said, gesturing to the chair beside her. As Austin settled into the seat next to her, she caught a hint of his cologne, something clean and subtle that made her very aware of how close they were sitting. The workstation suddenly felt much smaller. "So," she began, trying to focus on the task at hand. "You mentioned your stream drops frames." "Constantly." Austin opened his laptop, and Sage immediately understood why. The desktop was chaos. Files scattered everywhere, programs running that should have been closed, and at least 15 browser tabs open. "I know it looks bad." "It looks like my roommate's computer," Sage said with a gentle laugh. "Do not worry, we can fix this." For the next hour, they worked side by side, their chairs close enough that their shoulders occasionally brushed, as Sage guided him through optimizing his streaming software. Every accidental touch sent a little spark through her, and she found herself stealing glances at his profile when he was focused on the screen. Austin was different than she had expected. When he did not understand something, he asked questions without any trace of ego. When she explained a concept, he listened intently, occasionally leaning closer to see what she was pointing at. The movement always brought that clean scent with it, making her thoughts scatter for just a moment. "Try clicking on the advanced settings," she said, her finger pointing to the screen. As he moved to follow her direction, his hand accidentally brushed against hers on the mouse. The contact lasted maybe 2 seconds, but it was enough to make her pulse quicken. "Sorry," he murmured, but he did not pull away immediately. Neither did she. "It is okay," she whispered, suddenly very aware of how close their faces were. She could see tiny flecks of gold in his brown eyes. They stayed like that for a heartbeat longer than necessary before Austin cleared his throat and refocused on the screen. "Okay, try running the stream now," she said, pulling up his streaming software, her voice slightly breathier than before. Austin launched his usual setup, and they both watched as the frame rate counter stayed steady. No drops. No stuttering. "Holy shit," he breathed, then immediately looked embarrassed. "Sorry, it has been months since it ran this smoothly." "Language does not bother me," Sage said with a smile. "And you are welcome." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching his test stream run perfectly. Then Austin turned to face her, and suddenly they were much closer than she had realized. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I know I am probably not what you expected when you offered to help." "What do you mean?" she asked, though her voice came out softer than intended. "I mean," Austin gestured vaguely at himself. "Online, I am this confident guy who has everything figured out. But in person, I am just awkward. I overthink everything. I probably seem like a completely different person." The vulnerability in his admission made Sage's heart skip. Here was someone with millions of followers, admitting that he felt as uncertain as she did most days. "You know what is funny?" she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I have this whole other identity online too. CodeSage. I am this anonymous tutorial creator who can explain complex algorithms to thousands of people. But ask me to order coffee without stuttering, and I will probably hide behind the menu." Austin's eyes widened slightly. "Wait, CodeSage? The coding tutorials?" Sage felt heat rise in her cheeks. She had not meant to reveal that. "You know CodeSage? Know them? I have been watching those tutorials for months trying to figure out my streaming setup." Austin stared at her in amazement. "You are telling me you are CodeSage, the person who made that incredible series on application programming interface optimization?" The genuine admiration in his voice made her stomach flutter. "You have actually watched my tutorials?" "Watched them? I have probably seen each one 3 times. They are the only reason my stream setup works at all." Austin shook his head, a slow smile spreading across his face. "This is incredible. Do you realize how good you are at this?" No one had ever looked at her work with such appreciation. Sure, she had comments on her videos, but seeing Austin's reaction in person, it was different. Better. "I am glad they helped," she said, trying to downplay the warm glow spreading through her chest. "Helped? Sage, your tutorials are better than anything I learned in my computer science classes. The way you break down complex concepts. It is like you can see exactly where people get confused and address it before they even realize they are lost." The sincerity in his voice made her breath catch. She had never had someone understand her work so completely, appreciate it so genuinely. "Thank you," she whispered, meeting his eyes. That means more than you know." For a moment, they just looked at each other. The lab felt impossibly quiet around them, just the soft hum of computers and the distant sound of her heart beating in her ears. Austin's gaze dropped briefly to her lips, and she felt something electric pass between them. His hand moved slightly on the desk, his fingers almost touching hers. Then his phone buzzed loudly on the desk, breaking the spell. Austin glanced at the notification and his expression shifted. Oh shit. I am supposed to be streaming in 20 minutes. I completely lost track of time. Go, Sage said quickly, though part of her wanted to ask him to stay. Your audience is waiting. Austin started packing up his equipment, moving with sudden urgency. But we barely got started on the gaming tutorials you wanted. There is always tomorrow, she said, helping him wind up cables. Tomorrow? Austin paused, looking hopeful. You would want to do this again? Of course. We made a deal, remember? I help with your tech setup. You help with my gaming skills. Right. The deal. Austin's smile was soft, almost shy again. Same time tomorrow? I will be here. As Austin headed toward the door, equipment bag slung over his shoulder, he turned back one more time. Hey, Sage? Yeah? For what it is worth, I think I like the real you even better than CodeSage, and I already thought CodeSage was pretty amazing. Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving her alone in the lab with racing thoughts and a smile she could not quite suppress. Sage stared at the door long after it had closed, replaying every moment of the last hour. The way he had listened to her explanations, the genuine appreciation in his voice when he had realized she was CodeSage. That moment when they had almost... Her phone buzzed with a message from Austin. His text was warm and grateful. Thanks again for tonight. Cannot wait to see how the stream runs with your optimizations. She typed back quickly, her fingers moving before she could overthink it. Let me know how it goes. And Austin? Yeah? Came his immediate response. Her heart fluttered as she sent her next message. I like the real you better than ReedPlays too. She could see he was typing. Then the indicator disappeared. Then it appeared again. Finally, his response came through, and it made her smile spread across her entire face. Tomorrow cannot come fast enough. Sage set her phone down and tried to focus on her homework, but her concentration was completely shot. Tomorrow felt like an eternity away, and she found herself already counting down the hours until she would see Austin Reed again. The shy, genuine, surprisingly vulnerable Austin Reed, who looked at her like she was something wonderful.